The strange thing is, I did everything I thought a good father in America was supposed to do, and still I ended up eating dinner alone most nights. My name is Richard Miller, and I'm 81 years old. For a long time, I couldn't understand how my children and I became polite strangers who happened to share the same last name.
I raised 3 kids in a modest suburban house in Ohio, the kind with a creaky staircase and a garage that never quite stayed organized. I worked most of my life as a project manager for a manufacturing company. Not glamorous work, but steady, dependable, the kind of job that paid the mortgage and kept health insurance active. I left the house before traffic thickened and came home after the sun had already started dropping behind the trees. Back then, I believed love was measured in tuition checks, braces paid for, and a refrigerator that was always full. I truly believed presence meant provision, and I wore that belief like a quiet badge of honor. When the kids were little, they used to rush me when I walked through the door, talking over each other about spelling tests, playground arguments, things that felt small to me but were clearly everything to them. I remember loosening my tie, smiling, telling them to give me a minute to change clothes or catch my breath. Those minutes stretched into evenings, and the evenings slowly turned into years. I kept telling myself there would be more time later, when work eased up, when promotions settled, when things felt secure. Later became a habit, and habits have a way of hardening without you noticing. As they got older, something shifted. The stories shortened. The excitement faded. Conversations became efficient and surface level. How was school? Fine. What are your plans this weekend? Not sure. I noticed the distance, but I explained it away as teenage independence, the natural pulling back that everyone says is normal. I responded the only way I knew how. I worked harder. I made sure college funds were solid. I made sure they never had to worry about money the way I did growing up. What I didn't see was how quietly they stopped bringing me their real worries. They learned to solve problems without my input, because I always seemed distracted, tired, or ready with a solution instead of curiosity. I was home most nights, but my mind was usually replaying meetings, reviewing deadlines, planning how to stay one step ahead. I thought listening meant not interrupting. I didn't understand that listening also meant lingering, asking follow-up questions, and letting silence sit without rushing to fix it. When my wife passed away 11 years ago, the house changed in a way I still struggle to describe. She had been the emotional center of the family, the one who noticed moods, who filled gaps I didn't realize were there. After the funeral, the kids came around often at first. They brought casseroles, helped sort paperwork, checked in regularly. I appreciated it deeply, but I didn't know how to lean into that closeness. I kept saying I was okay, that they didn't need to worry, that I had things under control. They believed me. Over time, visits became less frequent. Jobs, marriages, kids of their own, life doing what life does. Phone calls turned into texts. Texts turned into holiday check-ins. I told myself this was just how adulthood worked, that I should be proud they were independent. But late at night, sitting in that quiet living room with the television off, I felt something heavy I couldn't quite name. It wasn't anger, and it wasn't exactly loneliness. It was the unsettling awareness that I didn't really know the adults my children had become. The moment everything finally clicked came on my 80th birthday. They organized a small celebration, tasteful and thoughtful. There was cake, framed photos from years ago, polite laughter. I watched them talk among themselves, confident, capable people with shared jokes and memories I wasn't fully part of. One of my daughters hugged me and said, "You were always there for us, Dad. We're grateful." She meant it kindly, but something about that word, grateful, settled heavily in my chest. Gratitude is not the same thing as closeness. After everyone left, I sat alone at the kitchen table with a slice of leftover cake and understood something I had avoided admitting my whole life. My children didn't drift away because they didn't love me. They drifted because I taught them, without ever intending to, that I wasn't the place to bring their inner world. I taught them that being responsible mattered more than being emotionally present, that problems should be solved quickly and quietly, that feelings were private things you handled on your own. I had confused responsibility with intimacy. I believed that if I carried the weight of the family, no one else needed to feel anything heavy. But children don't just need someone who provides, they need someone who notices when their voice changes, who asks the second question, who stays even when the conversation is uncomfortable or inconvenient. This past year, I've been trying to show up differently. I call not to check on schedules or finances, but to ask how they're actually doing, and then I force myself to stay quiet enough to hear the real answer. Sometimes it opens a door, sometimes it doesn't. Habits built over decades don't dissolve overnight. There's warmth now, but also space that may never fully close, and I'm learning to accept that without resentment. If you're listening to this and you still have time, I don't want you to hear this as guilt or warning. I want you to hear it as clarity. Being dependable is important, but being emotionally available is what people remember. Providing a life is meaningful, but sharing a life is what creates connection. At 81, I've learned that children don't drift away suddenly. They drift one missed conversation at a time, one rushed moment at a time, one silence at a time. And closeness, when it's still possible, returns the same way. Slowly, quietly, with intention. If my story stays with you at all, I hope it encourages you to linger a little longer when someone you love starts to talk, because years later, that might be the moment that still holds you together.